With so much content out there, how do you filter through all the noise and cut straight to the value? What has become very apparent is that the best way to learn is to surround yourself with those you aspire to be. But you can't just watch what they do. At some point, you have to turn it into an action. Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. On this podcast, you will go on a journey as we speak to people who are making a difference in their industries, and people who, if we listen to closely and take action, can turn you into who you want to be. My name is Mark Sclair, and this is Your Turning Point. How do people take that leap, though? What is some steps that people can do?
The science is 4%. So there's a psychological trigger there. You're running 4% longer than you've ever run before.
Yep.
If it's a 1% gain, you're not going to gain any confidence. But if it's a 4% gain, you're going to gain confidence for doing that. Just recognize that actually the consequences you think might happen as a result of you taking whatever leap you're going to take. There's more opportunities for career changes and technology and communications and transportation that have ever happened before. Where you can pull the trigger and nudge the bullet. That's the world we live in now. Chances are very good that you will never live under a bridge.
Dr. Corrie Block, UAE's top business coach with over 25 years of experience and a successful track record of transforming 150 plus companies. Dr. Block is a leading authority in business strategy, organizational behavior, and leadership. As a professional of strategic management at Monarch Business School in Switzerland and a Certified Master Neuroplastician, he brings an extensive expertise to his work. Dr. Block is the author of acclaimed publications such as Spartan CEO, 6 Pillars of Executive Performance, and Business is Personal, a blueprint for finding meaning at work. His latest book, Love at Work, The Final Frontier, is of empathy in leadership. Dr. Corrie Block, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
Brilliant. Okay. There's a question I ask everybody at the very beginning. Imposter syndrome. What does it mean to you?
Oh, everybody has it all the time, including me.
Okay.
I can't believe people want to read books that I wrote. Every time I stand up on stage and I'm like, okay, I got to think of something really good to say. And then people come and talk to me afterwards and I think, wow, okay, so it's really actually impactful. I've been at this for 3 decades now, and I still wonder why people want to pay attention to me. And that is the same thing that is happening in the lives of almost all of my coaching clients. Those that have any degree of self-reflection at all wonder how they got there and why they're entrusted with all of these resources, not just the money, but the people, right? There's thousands of lives and thousands of families at stake. And imposter syndrome is very real across the board. Yeah. And that is, I think it's just a recognition of your humanity and the gap between who you know yourself to be and who other people think you are based on your presentation to the world. Because we're all presenting ourselves, right? I'm presenting a version of myself now that, I don't have the same presentation with my wife. I don't have the same presentation with my kids. I don't have the same presentation as a coach with my clients. You know what I mean? We adjust ourselves just a little bit and throw that presentation out at the world, hoping that the echo we hear back justifies the presentation. Yeah. And that's that wondering whether or not the echo is going to sound much like the presentation I've given. That's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So for me, and it is so true what you're saying there, but what I see it as is, and hopefully we'll have a discussion on this, is it stops you from being complacent. Because if you were like, hey, I'm the man, I've got this, I know what I'm doing, you don't rehearse, you don't practice, and I'm sure there's many things that you can say whilst you're in your sleep, but before you do it, or before you get on stage, you're always doing some sort of preparation, and that stops you from getting complacent. And that means that you're always going to not just stay in your lane, but stay in a place where, yes, it might be uncomfortable, but if you get through it, wow, the opportunity is endless.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the imposter syndrome sets in on that top 10 to 15% of our performance in anything, right? Where you're, at 80% of what you can do, you can do it. You're very confident. You're driving, you're not thinking. You can speak without thinking. You can make decisions without thinking. It's in that top 20% where you're like, I hope I can pull this off.
Yeah.
That's where the imposter syndrome sets in, because your confidence starts to wane a little bit. You have less experience at that level.
Yeah.
But when you're pushing past that 100% mark, where you're actually doing something you've never done before, by definition, you've never done it, right? So you don't have the confidence that comes from experience. You have the confidence that comes from other people's experience, things you've heard, things you've seen. And then to take that on and say, oh, I can do this, even though you've never done it before, that's where the imposter syndrome might set in, because you're still wondering. You're wondering if you're actually capable. And it's not until you've done it that you realize you are.
So how do people take that leap, though? What is some steps that people can do? Because there's a lot of people which are listening to this now who will never get started.
Right.
They will never get going with it.
Yes.
And what is it that people can do, an action that someone can take to build momentum where they can at least give it an opportunity?
Well, as it turns out, there's actual good science behind this. And the science is 4%.
4%.
Yeah. No matter what it is, if you have a subjective view that whatever you're doing, you're lifting something that's 4% heavier than anything you've ever lifted before, you're running 4% longer than you've ever run before, you're trying something that's 4% more difficult than anything you've ever tried before. If you've got that kind of view where it's about 4% harder than anything you've ever done, your chances of making it are pretty good. Right? And it's enough that you'll gain a little bit of confidence for doing it. Yeah. If it's a 1% gain, you're not going to gain any confidence. But if it's a 4% gain, you're going to gain confidence for doing that. So there's a psychological trigger there.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is, first of all, start with something that's 4% harder than anything you've ever done before. Second thing is recognize that actually the consequences you think might happen as a result of you taking whatever leap you're going to take, chances are very good that those consequences are not going to happen. And even if they do, they're mitigatable, right? It's a steerable ship. You can pull the trigger and nudge the bullet. That's the world we live in now. And you live in the most abundant time in all of human history, right? There's more opportunities for career changes and technology and communications and transportation that have ever happened before. We've never lived in a time where it's so easy to get back up. So it's, we're completely padded on the way down, and then it's very, very easy to stand up again. So the consequences that would have been paid by your ancestors that earned you the right to be born, you don't have to pay those consequences. Chances are very good that you will never live under a bridge at any point in your future if you're good at getting back up.
It's, if we take social media as an example, okay, people, they don't want to be on camera, they don't want to put themselves out there. But I believe that we live in a time of mediocre. Okay, there's so much quantity of content out there. Actually, if you look at most of it, it's such surface level stuff. What content people are putting out, and then we start doing it, and then we're like, oh, let me try what this person's doing. Let me try what that person's doing. And they forget actually who they are as a person as well. But what I like to talk about in regards to confidence and self-esteem. How do you get that self-confidence? Because a lot of the time you're reliant on somebody going, oh, you did a good job. Oh, that was really good of you. Oh, I'm so proud of you for doing that. And then it becomes this drug that unless you're getting that instant gratification, I guess, then you're like, oh, I'm not going to bother doing this now. So how can you have that self-reflection, I guess, to work out actually, this is what I want to do and I want to go continue with this?
So for me, that comes from understanding who you are, right? If you can decide one of two things, right? You can decide to care about yourself, or you can decide what other people care about you, or whose voices in echo you care about, right? So you can say, I care what the whole world thinks about me. So you put out a piece of communication, and if you care what everyone says, it's going to be rough, right? If you care what just a narrow band of people, your family, your friends, if you care what they say, it'll be less rough. If you only care what you say, and you don't care about what the response is, you might be a bit egotistical, but it's not going to be rough for you because you don't care, right? So it's caring about the echo back from society that makes us vulnerable to that feedback. And to assess the communication itself is a risk. I don't like social media. No. Me, personally, I don't. And when I put something out onto social media, more often than not, it's mediocre. I don't want to irritate people. I don't care about the debate. My my venue is here on podcast. My venue is with my coaching clients. My venue is on stage, either training or speaking. That's my venue, and I'll be very controversial in those places. Social media, like you said, it's an ocean of mediocrity.
Yeah.
And I think probably I'm just another drop in that ocean of mediocrity myself. And so if other people are looking at my social media going, oh, Corrie's social media is so great, I'm not my benchmark.
No.
I'm really not. I'm saying things that I'm hoping are going to add value to people's lives. If they read it and it adds value, great. If they read it and I don't think it can possibly detract value, except maybe taking a second of your time. But to be honest, that's not where I'm looking for impact. I'm looking to be known, but impact isn't there.
But should you care what people think?
We're intensely social creatures. This is the part that's really difficult because you'll never get through an entire day of your life alone. We wake up with this idea that it's all up to me, hustle, hustle, hustle. I've got to get we feel individualistic. None of the 10,000 ancestors that earned you the right to be born survived this world by being individualistic. Okay?
Yeah.
We think it's up to us. None of us have ever survived this world without a community. You're not going to be able to get through today without interacting with at least 100 lives, right? Maybe thousands if you include the people that manufactured the tires and then installed them on your car and then sold you the car, right? So there's thousands of different human lives that add value to their communities in exchange for a share of the resources, and those lives culminate in your being able to get through your day. Plus, you'll have direct interaction with hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. Most of us are now averaging around 4,500 human interactions every day. Oh. Yeah, across our devices, about 35 interactions or notifications every hour. And so it's becoming a lot more complex now. So when you ask whether or not we should care what people think, yes, because that's a survival tool, right? You're not in this world alone, and you have to be able to participate in an economic tribe or in an economic society in order to survive. So you should care what that society thinks. You should care what that tribe thinks. You should care what your family thinks.
Yeah.
That makes sense because your survival depends on it, because that's how your ancestors earned you the right to be born. They weren't wandering around planting food in the desert. They built tribes and then cities and nations and empires and more recently businesses. But yeah, those tribes are part of your survival tool.
Yeah, it's like, to touch on that a little bit, is that somebody would say, "What I don't care what that person thinks. I don't care what that person's doing." But the trouble is, without getting too deep into this, is that most of us, we don't love ourselves.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah. So I think as much as we say, well, I don't care what that person thinks, well, if you don't care about yourself as well, then what are you going to you're going to harm yourself and self-destruct.
That's right.
So you have to have something that's going to kind of hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with what you've said as well, like it's this echo chamber of people that you want around you.
Yeah.
That you could go through social media and you can see loads of content. I mean, I always like to read the comments, what other people are posting.
Yeah.
Because that's where the juicy stuff is. That's when you're realizing what's going on in society, really, where the comments are. But when you see these comments, the question I ask myself, and especially if it's directed at me, even if my friends message me, going, why are you wearing that? What are you doing that for? Why are you putting yourself out to the world? Yeah. I say, why are they asking me that? Does that person have a problem themselves? And a lot of the time, it's them reflecting how they are feeling.
Yeah, it's a projection.
Yeah. So that's how I process it. But I think a lot of people, they just go, oh my God, this person thinks this of me and I can't do anything. But I always say, like, to the other person, are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody? And that annoys them as well. That really annoys them.
That assumes that there's something wrong, right?
But no, but it shows that they're not going to hurt me either. Even though they might not have meant to. They go, it's come from a good place. Yeah. But it's like, why are you posting stuff? And then he messages me later on saying, oh, can you help me with this thing? I'm trying to put this thing together,
I think the answer across the board should be, yes, I'm okay. And yes, I need to talk to someone. I think both of those things are true of all of us all of the time.
Yeah.
But like you say, I think that most of our communication comes from our view of ourselves. And I was asked, I'm saying a lot more I love yous lately because I think we've been too stingy with that word.
Okay.
So I'm saying a lot more I love yous to people. Somebody came up to me, good friend to me, and said, I love you. And I said, okay, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, it means I am sharing with you the love that I have for myself.
Yeah.
And I just really I enjoyed that definition. I think that's a really honest, authentic, and generous piece of communication. If I'm sharing with you the love that I have for myself, then the echo that comes back is only a reflection of how you receive it, not what I've communicated. And in that sense, I don't care what you say. But if you receive it well, I care about you. Your reflection of my love isn't as meaningful to me as my love for you. And then that becomes much more impactful.
Yeah. I hope this isn't going to fall on deaf's ear, but there's a movie called I Love You Man. Have you seen that movie?
I don't know that I have.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry.
We'll have to cut that bit out. So it's with Paul Rudd.
Okay.
And he's only ever got female friends. And he's getting married.
Oh, I have seen this. Yes, on an airplane. It was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and he ends up meeting this guy, Jason Segel.
Yes.
Yeah, who ends up becoming his best man. But he has to go through a process of trying to get best
That's
man
right.
for his wedding. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's never had any interaction with men, really. But he's like, I love you, man.
I love you.
Yeah.
I love how we put that disclaimer in there, right? Like, we can't just say, I love you.
Yeah.
We have to say, I love you, dude.
Yeah, dude, yeah.
I love you, bro. Like, there has to be that kind of caveat. And that's one of the things that really irritates me, is that we're always couching that, especially the word love. I think we're too much padding that word because we're afraid of the impact that it's going to have on the other person, and then the impact that it might have on our relationship. I think we're just too stingy with it.
But I think if we look at this and let's look at love languages.
Yeah.
Whilst we're going into love, yeah?
Yeah.
And this does relate to the workplace, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
It's how that person wants to be loved. So if you're putting yourself on somebody saying, hey, I love you, but that's not how they take in love, then isn't it important to understand how they want that spoken to them like?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the I love you means I'm communicating in a language that I'm at least somewhat confident that you're going to be able to receive. I love Gary Chapman's work. I've been teaching it in management for years. I teach it as a form of managerial influence, and I just translate the 5 languages into behaviors that managers can use with their people. And it never ceases to surprise me. They're shocked. They're like, oh my goodness, yes, some people like this, and some people are like that. Oh, that's excellent. And then I tell them it comes from a book on relationships, right? Yeah. Specifically long-term committed romantic relationships. And they're like, right, okay, well, maybe this is just a human thing.
And that's exactly it. It's understanding the other person in front of you,
100%,
and knowing how they want to be treated and understood. And
so what's your love language, or your love languages, your top 1 or 2?
Well, I'd say what I like is, for me, is appreciation.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I will do these things for people.
Yeah.
Okay. And if somebody says a little thing, I make a note of that and I make sure it's done.
Right.
That's how I show mine. Some people, but then it's not appreciated a lot of the time because then it becomes expected.
Right.
So you do these little things, and then it's like, oh, well, you should have done that anyway. Oh, you meant to make me coffee in the morning. Oh, you meant to do all these things. Oh, you were meant to have set up the office early because I did it once or twice, or I stayed late after work. Yeah. And then it becomes expectant, and then there's no appreciation there from that.
Right.
So that's my if I'm appreciated and respected, that's
right.
how we can work better together.
Yeah, of course. For me too, it's appreciation and touch. Like words of affirmation is Chapman's language. Okay. Words of affirmation and touch are really big for me. Yeah. In managerial, like when I teach this to managers and we talk about touch, right? They're like, oh, well, you can't touch people. I'm like, okay, well, there is, a simple affirmation here or here that matters to people. There is times when, you'll know the huggers in the office. Yeah. Right? They'll come up to you like this, right? And you're based on your love language, if you're not touch oriented, you might think there's something untoward about that. But if you recognize, that's how they like to be communicated with, they're communicating from their native language, you take that hug, right? Not for your sake. You take that hug for their sake. Yeah. Right? And then that communicates to them that they're accepted and they're loved and they're trusted. And what that translates into is discretionary effort when they're not being managed, which is 95% of the time.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to being a leader or a manager, one of the first questions actually, I don't know if everyone does this. Sometimes I do things and I just think that's the norm. Okay, but if I'm looking after a team or running a team or leading a team, I sit down with each person individually and I understand, like, how do you want to be communicated with? How do you want to be spoken to? What's important to you? What drives you?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm understanding what is kind of their love language.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do we move this now into the place of work? Because that's where I want us to be. Okay.
Languages?
This conversation now.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Because what's happening is, and this is the main reason for my podcast, is that I want to help people build careers.
Sure.
And to build careers, you need to build relationships.
Yeah, sure.
Because like you said, you can't do it alone.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's a lonely road.
Yeah.
You need people along with you that can help you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, you need someone to champion you, support you, guide you.
And challenge you.
Okay, yeah. I'd agree with that as well. Yeah.
So so in finance, we know that the only free lunch is diversification of investment.
Okay.
Right? That's the only thing that will absolutely make more money than not doing it.
Okay.
Diversifying your investment.
Yeah.
We don't tend to think about that in terms of relationships, but the diversification of input and influence in relationships is the free lunch in sociology. You want to live a better quality of life. You have more influence. We want to have a deeper thought life and interact better with information. You need people around you that are different than you. I can't tell you the number of times I've got, speaking of a workplace scenario, I've walked into a board of directors and they're all sitting there, there's 8 of them, and they're like, "Oh, Corey, we're so glad you're here, but we don't really have any issues on the board. We're a very smooth running board." And that phrase really irritates me. We're a smooth running board. And I say, of course you are. You're all middle-aged white men from the same country.
Yeah.
Like you were raised on the same cartoons. You ate the same cereals for breakfast when you were growing up. You think with the same brain. You shouldn't be surprised when you make the same decisions and everybody agrees with everybody else. You have one mind, right? But that is not profitable. Profitable comes from the diversification of input. You need people around you that are, by definition, different.
Yeah.
In order to see the same problems from a different angle. And not just sociologically different, not economically different, but even like gender balance in decision-making bodies like executive committees. That is a massive step in the direction of profitability gains. We've got huge science on this now. And that's because, well, big surprise, men and women are different.
Yeah.
Equal but not the same, right? Women use different cognitive or different areas of the brain to solve the same cognitive problems as men do. Not all of them, but some of them. And they have more connections between the left and right hemispheres of their brains than we. They're different by design, and the economics make us different, and religious makes us different. History makes us different. Genetics makes us different. And those differences, when you bring them into a decision-making activity, like a board of directors or a committee or an executive committee, those differences are profitable. They are friction-bearing, but the friction itself is profitable if you value it. And I think more of us would do better in our lives if we recognized the value of bringing people alongside us that were a little different than us, so that we could see the world not just through our own perspective and those that are close to us, but we could see the world through perspectives that are very different than us. And that gives us a lot wider of a view, a lot wider of a worldview, if we trust another person's ability to filter the available information, which I think is maybe one of our big challenges. As individuals, I have no hope at all in the 90 years that I'm going to be on this planet, maybe 100 now with medical advancements.
Yeah.
I have no hope at all of sorting through enough of the available information to be even reasonably confident about anything. Right? There's just so much information out there. And so my best practice for sorting through the information, for doing better in society, for having more right answers than wrong answers, or let's say more helpful answers than unhelpful answers, is to surround myself with people who are looking at the same blocks of information through completely different filters. And then asking them, what do you see? When you look at this, what do you see? When you look at this, what do you see? And then when hearing all of that back, that means that I have the benefit of not just my lifetime, but I have the benefit of 5 or 8 other lifetimes of filters, looking at the same pieces of information. Valuing that is valuing friction, but it also leads to unbelievably better decision-making quality because of better input-seeking behavior. It's profitable, not just in the boardroom, but in your personal life as well.
Yeah. So I think there's a word you said there, which was perspective. And when I do my training, the first thing I say to people is the most important perspective is your client's perspective or the person you're speaking to, their perspective.
That's correct.
How they see it is all that matters.
That's right.
Yeah. And let's say that there was, God forbid, a car accident, okay, and you've got 3 witnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all saw the same thing.
Yeah.
But it all gave completely different police reports.
Correct.
Yeah. Or if we look at things like, which is an absolute headache at the moment in football, which is VAR.
Right.
It's meant to be that once the ref says this, that's it. It's done. That's clear as day. But then you've got the punditry and the commentary. No, this wasn't a foul. He was outside the box. Like there's no define of it.
Yeah.
It's that's how that person sees it as.
That's right.
Yeah. And for me, like the only perspective is that person you're speaking to.
Yes.
So you have to understand how comes they're feeling like that. But how do people start to, because we know that that's a real strength to have, to see it from other people's perspectives.
That's right.
Yeah? But how do we get out of this narrow-minded of, we're on a table with, or an executive table with 8 of the same people.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're doing the same thing. How do we go, no, let's actually be more open to listen to others.
Yeah. I can't remember if I might be misattributing this, but I think it was Peter Drucker who said that the most important ingredient in active listening is a closed mouth.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to just say it was Drucker, and I'm going to have to look that up afterwards. But anyway, I remember the quote. I don't remember exactly who said it.
Okay.
But I've done a lot of thinking about that, about listening and the value of listening. And I've read, I don't know, a dozen books on active listening and this process of active listening and all these stages of active listening. And for me, it boils down to 2 things: curiosity and care. If you're curious about somebody else and you care about them, those are the only ingredients you need, right? You will ask the questions that allow them to feel safe, to be transparent with you.
Yeah.
If they trust you, they'll be transparent. If they don't trust you, they won't be transparent. But the more curious you are and the more you genuinely care about whoever it is that you're listening to, the more transparent they're going to be, the more trust there will be between you. So those for me are the only ingredients, aside from Drucker's closed mouth. You need to be curious and you need to care. And if you're not curious about them and you don't care about them, you have no business talking to them.
Yeah. I think something which I went through a process of understanding more about myself. So I was like, right, this is me, this is who I am. I understood that. And then I asked other people what they thought of me.
Right.
Yeah, good and bad.
Yes.
Yeah, and reached out to good people that were going to challenge me as well. And there was a lot of... I don't put myself out there enough. I'm more than I think I am. I can do more. I can always be more. Which is nice to hear. But then it's a bit of a burden as well when there's higher expectation from other people than there is of yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. But one thing that really stuck out to me was that how you make people feel when you're sat with them. Yeah, and I don't think you can ever underestimate the power that you have of how that person feels when they're around you.
Yeah.
And I think, if you look at work, especially relationships,
Sure.
When you're with a client, when you're sat with your manager,
sure.
and you're just actually listening, and they can see you're listening because most of the time they don't get listened to.
Right.
Yeah, it goes over people's heads. They're on their phones. It's hard to get their attention, or they're listening because they have to. They're actually not taking it in, like active listening.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
That's something which I've really worked on, but it's been a natural thing for me, which is great. But then I've also got to, at the end of my conversation with somebody, be like, how did I do that? And has that really made a difference with that person?
Right.
And a lot of the time, in the feedback from trainings that I do and stuff, that's the really positive signs of it.
Yeah, you'll hear that in the echo. Right, we're always trying to present a message to the world, training, speaking, listening. You want to add your voice. When you're listening to another person, that becomes your responsibility, that echo. You need them to hear back what they've put out to the world in a relatively familiar voice, right? You need them to hear from you, this is what I heard you say. This is why I think you're saying it. Is that right?
Yeah.
And once you've produced the echo for them, they feel a lot more confident. They feel like, okay, good, my message is getting across. I'm valued in the world. I put this out, I hear the echo back. That's great.
Yeah.
So that's where active listening becomes, I don't know what we call it, active echoing.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, the pundits would call it mirroring,
Yeah.
but it's not that simple.
No.
If you genuinely care about somebody, you genuinely care that they feel heard and understood and valued and eventually, hopefully, loved as a result of what you've not just heard from them, but echoed back.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I do my trainings, there's 5 things we all want to be.
Yeah.
And the first one is right. Okay. Yeah. But a lot of the time we're trying to prove somebody wrong. So
Right.
where does that get us?
Correct.
Yeah. So leave our ego at the door and at least understand why that person's feeling like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So then the next one is we want to be appreciated, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And we want to be understood. There's nothing worse than you talking for 10, 15 minutes and you've given all your energy, all your effort, and they didn't even get it.
Yes.
Now you can reflect a little bit and say, hey, did I say it in the right way? But you've done it 1,000 times. So you're like, why are they not getting this? And it becomes frustrating. And then you don't really want to work with that person. Yeah. And then they don't want to make a mistake. People don't want to make a mistake. Yeah. So they just stay in their lane, never make any difference. Yeah. Or if you look at a business, I want to get somebody to choose one of my products. Yeah. But they've got this world leader as a trainer that's coming in. Yeah. That's the safe bet. Yeah. I'm well known, but nothing on that level. So it's they don't want to make that mistake, so they stick with what they know. Yeah. And then the last one is they want to be reassured. Yeah. And that is sales, which is what we talk about, which is what this is about, but also in regards to within a workplace as well. So I just think if you can think of those 5 things with any communication you're having with a client or a colleague, and you take that into account, those relationships are going to be a lot stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely side with you. People want to be right? Yeah. But you can't be right all of the time. If you were right all of the time, you'd be a god. Yeah. Right? Then we would have to change the nature of our relationship with you and we'd have to start worshiping you. And that would be very awkward, right? Yeah. So we want to be right. But if we can't be right, we need to be understood. And if we can't be agreed with, we need to be understood. And you're absolutely correct about that. Most people, most of the time, actually don't need to be agreed with if they feel understood. Yeah. So in a workplace environment, in your home, your children don't need to be agreed with nearly as much as they need to be understood. They need to feel that whatever they've said is echoed back to them in a meaningful language where they can say, yeah, actually, my communication was understood. And even though we're not going in the direction that I want to go in, at least my voice was heard. Yeah. If people feel misunderstood, then their voice, what they've added to the world, that's blocked. Then they don't feel valued, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel that they themselves are, that their contribution has been received. So most of the time people don't need to be as right as they need to be understood. That's the first one, right? And then the next one you brought up that I thought was really brilliant is people don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to be wrong. Right? They want to be right and they don't want to be wrong. But if they're going to be wrong, because everybody's wrong from time to time, if we make mistakes from time to time, because we're not gods, right? We're going to make mistakes. What they need to be is supported. Yeah. Right? In their mistakes. And we know this from Silicon Valley, right? We move fast and break things because the cost of breaking things is far less than the cost of not moving fast. And I say this all the time in organizations. If your people aren't making mistakes, they're not moving fast enough, or they're afraid of you. And that either of those things are going to kill your innovation. You're going to kill their spirit. You're going to kill everything in them that is a 1,000,000-year-old successful apex predator, right? Each and every member of your team is the product of 1,000,000 years of successful survival and adaptation. They are capable of far more than they think they're capable of and far more than you think you're capable of, but they don't exercise nearly as much power as they have because they're afraid of the cost of appearing like they're not a god. And that is the most ridiculous thing, right? We're afraid that if we're not right, we're human. And if we're wrong, we're way too human, right? So somewhere in the middle of this, we really need to be supported, cared for. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel like we can break things and not get yelled at. Yeah. We need to feel like breaking things is actually part of the process, and that if we're not tripping and falling down from time to time, we're not climbing something steep enough, or we're not running quickly enough. I want my team to be making mistakes, because if they're not making mistakes, they're either afraid of me or they're not running.
Yeah. So there's it stops people from using their initiative as well. Like they know that they should go this way, but unless they get the approval and the sign off from management and it goes to board and this and that, they're like, use some initiative. And it's very frustrating out here at times because of that. Yeah. But there's a quote which I heard, or there was this scenario of this big CEO that was talking, and somebody made a mistake that cost the company millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And they said, are you going to fire that person? And they said, well, I don't think they're going to make that mistake again.
Right.
Because it was that big of a mistake.
Yep.
Yeah. That they're going to make sure they never, ever, ever do it again.
Yeah.
And you can't put a price on that really, because you recruit somebody, a new person, and they didn't make that mistake before, they're going to potentially do it again.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. Amy Edmondson does a really good job of that in The Right Kind of Wrong.
Okay.
So Amy Edmondson is probably the world's, I'm going to say she's the best thinker on psychological safety in organizations that's ever lived. I don't know if she coined that term or not, but very close to it. If not, I think she's spent the majority of her career thinking about psychological safety. I met her was it November of last year? And I love The Right Kind of Wrong. It's absolutely brilliant research on how organizations can learn from failure, and the kinds of failures that make sense and the kinds of failures that don't make sense. We don't just want to break things for the sake of breaking things. I mean, that doesn't make sense. That's not the right kind of wrong. But my challenge in creating a kind of environment where people feel free to be innovative and fast and risk-taking and brave enough to make those choices where, you might break something, requires the kind of psychological safety that we might describe as love.
Okay.
Love is the highest form of psychological safety. It is in those kinds of relationships where we feel free to be ourselves, to be our most transparent, to bring our whole selves to work, to be completely authentic. And it's only in the most loving relationships where actually we even believe that we're fully loved, because we believe that we're fully known. If we're fully authentic, that's the only way that we'll ever know that we're fully loved. And so that is the highest form of psychological safety, when you know that you're fully loved because you're fully known. We talk about bringing our whole selves to work. We talk about psychological safety in organizations. We do not talk about its highest form.
Yeah.
Right? But imagine the kind of authenticity you get in a board of directors, where at the end of a board of directors meeting, they're all saying, I love you, Tim. I love you, Ahmed. I love you, Terry. Right? And they're like, and there's actually that camaraderie there. But during the meeting, one of them can turn to the other one and say, Mark, you're being a jerk right now. Stop it. I know you. I love you. This is not like you. You're getting in your own way and you're getting in your own head. Like, just take a breath. Okay, but in a professional environment where psychological safety isn't there, isn't at its highest form, you can't say that. You bottle it up. But the highest form of critical feedback that would lead to the highest form of change in an organization comes from that highest form of psychological safety, where somebody can turn to where you can turn to your best friend and say, not just, I love you, man, but I love you, man. This has got to stop.
Yeah.
Okay. You can provide that kind of direct, impactful, critical feedback only in that highest form of psychological safety.
Well, I got fired for being myself. It was one of the first jobs when I came to Dubai. Okay, and British humour.
Right.
British humour. The guy came into the office.
Yeah.
And he had no computer monitor.
Okay.
He had no computer screen.
Right.
Yeah, and he's like, "Where's my computer screen?" And he didn't know where it was, and nobody said anything. And then he goes and gets the manager. The manager comes out. Where's Mohammed's computer screen? I said, I put it over there. It was a joke. That's how I got fired.
Oh no, really?
Yeah,
Just practical joke.
Practical joke. Unfortunately though, with cultures and humor, and it doesn't always transfer over well.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into this definition of good fit. Right? Yeah. When we're looking at bringing somebody into an organization, we say, oh yeah, that Mark, he's going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into that good fit definition that doesn't fit on a CV and will not be exhumed during an interview. Right. Like, Yeah. Maybe you weren't quite a good fit.
Yeah,
At least not for Muhammad and his need for his computer.
Yeah. Well, luckily, like the manager called off a little bit.
Yeah.
He called me up later. He said, "Look, you can come back in," but it was there wasn't. I think within a month I was gone from that company.
Yeah, of course.
It was my first job in Dubai, and
Right.
and it's actually one of the reasons why I do what I do, which is learning and development.
Sure.
Trying to help others be the best that they can be, really. Because when I came into the company, my onboarding experience was, here's a book, go over there and read this. And no one spoke to me for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
That was my onboarding experience.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Well, that says something about the culture of the organization, right?
Yeah, sink or swim.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got this, go at it, we're not going to help you. And, that's not leadership.
Yeah.
It's not even management,
Right. We're just going to throw you in the deep end. If you swim, you're fine. If not, then you'll drown, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a complete revolving door, volume. Let's get loads of people in, see who sticks.
That's interesting you say that, because there's some organizational cultures are a bit like that. I restructured a property development firm I won't name them.
Neither will I.
Right. A few years ago, that decided during our workshop to produce their vision, mission, values, and goals for the organization. One of their value words was dominance.
Wow.
And I've never seen that before. But I walk in with all of this space, right? I'm like completely non-judgmental. And so when they're thinking through their value words for the organization, they come up with dominance. And I'm like, okay, let's just put that's valuable for them. We're going through the exercise of deciding what we are and what we aren't. And I'm looking for the opportunity to strike dominance off of the list. Oh no, it's on the About Us page of their website now. It is a plaque on their wall as soon as you walk in. The interesting thing is that the culture of the organization reflects this. So they themselves in their production of luxury property, they're very, very good. It's a very good luxury brand. But the culture of the organization, if you survive the first 6 months in that company, your tenure will probably be between 8 and 10 years. You'll spend almost a decade there.
Okay.
That's the average tenure after the first 6 months. The first 6 months is that revolving door. Almost nobody makes it, ever. And they do that by design. They want a certain kind of person to last. So they just bring everybody in, and only, a few people from each cohort survive. And those are the people that they want. It's dominance actually is a cultural value in that organization. And so when you deal with the higher ups, they're all very respectfully aggressive with each other and respectfully honoring with each other. They all know they're the kind of person that would survive there. Yeah. There's no knockdown, drag out fights. There's sparring matches. And you should do it this way, and I think I should do it this way, and this is what we should do. And at the end of the day, they get it done. And they get it done without hurting each other's feelings, because nobody in the organization is that soft.
So do you think that should be allowed?
I think they decide what should be allowed in their organization. That's their economic tribe. But they decide who gets to be a member of their economic tribe. Each and every member provides value to the tribe in exchange for a share of the tribe's winnings in the game, the economic game. It happens to be a property game. But they decide what kind of gameplay they want, and they decide what kind of players they want on their team. That's not I don't get to decide that.
But do you think there's some people that try to spoil that game? Like, this isn't how business should be run. You should be more caring of people. And I'll answer the question. Like, I feel that if that's how you want to run a business, if that's who you want to hire, if that's who you want in your business, that's who you are. And be happy with that.
No, I think that's just the filter, right? In much the same way that most military organizations have a hell week to start off the training for the Navy SEALs or, the Green Beret or whatever it is. You want to be the toughest of the tough? Okay, well, show us that you've got what it takes to survive a week here. That's not a bad thing. If that's the filter that you want to try to find the person that you need, you just have to pay for the cost of the filter. It's expensive to bring all of those people in, to onboard them, to train them to do the first 6 months, to pay them for their first 6 months. To find one person that will survive in the Navy SEALs costs thousands and thousands of dollars, right? Just to get them started. And then their training costs millions, right? So I don't think that's I don't think there's right or wrong. I think there's helpful and unhelpful. And what's helpful and unhelpful has to do with your goals and the organization's goals. Keeping in mind, of course, that the game of business and all of its forms, property development, FMCG, L&D, for example, all of these games are made up by people not smarter than you.
Yeah.
All of the rules are made up.
Not smarter, or a lot smarter.
Not smarter than you. No, all of the games are made up. All of the rules of those games are made up, and we only play by the rules that enough of us sufficiently agree by. Right? We all agree that it's not cool to kill each other, so we play by the rule we shouldn't kill each other. Right? That's a rule. But in business, there's a lot less agreement on those rules. There's national agreements, there's regulatory agreements, there's some international agreements where we all say, okay, these are the rules we made up, and we're going to agree to play by these rules. Not unlike the game of football or tennis. These are the rules, and this is how we decide. But the more complex our society gets, the more difficult it is to decide who's broken the rules and who's kept them, right? We're looking at the VAR now, judging whether the ball is inside the line, outside the line, or if that's the shadow of the ball hitting in the line. And if the shadow hits the ball and it hits the line and the sun is in the right position, is it out? Is it an offside? Well, actually, that's becoming a lot more complex. What's not complex is understanding that it's just a game. It's a game. Business in all of its forms is a game that we play so that we can feed our families, educate our kids, take care of our parents, and build our own dreams. And most of us are playing games to accomplish things that are outside of the games. We don't wake up passionate about football. We don't wake up passionate about manufacturing sauces or putting tires on cars or even building buildings. We don't wake up thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to balance another spreadsheet today. That's not why we get up. We get up thinking, okay, I need to add value to the world in exchange for a share of the resources so that I can educate my kids in the options that they want. So I can provide a higher quality of life for my family and my friends than I had when I was growing up. So I can provide a higher quality of life for my parents than they would otherwise be able to afford. That's why we actually go to work, is because of that. But recognizing that it's just a game means that, yeah, you know what? You can play by the rules if you want to, but recognize that the rules were made up by people not smarter than you. Most of those rules can be bent. Some of them can be broken. And if you're powerful enough in the game, you can rewrite the rules.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, because I want to help people now play the game.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay.
So
here's our pivot.
Let's get into this. I think, somebody is in a place of work.
Yeah.
Okay. And they want to rise up the ranks. Yeah. They need to get the support to be able for that to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of the people which they're communicating with to get heard and seen are actually people of senior authority.
That's right.
Okay? Yeah. And most people out here, and I think in the Middle East more so than anywhere in like Europe or Middle East.
Yeah.
So Europe or America, there's this inferior complex, there's this superior complex of this person, I can't speak to them, communicate with them, they're way above me.
Sure.
So how do we bridge that gap where somebody can then be in the same room with somebody and be heard and be understood and get somebody at least hearing them out?
Sure.
To get that opportunity.
Yeah, look, power is perceived often. Some power is not perceived, some power is real. But in organizations, we would call that influence, right? And your best way of becoming influential is the closed mouth strategy.
Okay.
Right? If you have a perception of somebody in hierarchy as having power and you have an inferiority complex, you don't know how to approach them, ask them questions. Right? Just keep them talking. They'll give you enough information that you need to communicate with them in a way that's impactful for them. And remember, they're also human. Every single one of us is just, we're putting on our pants one leg at a time. We put on the same shoes every day. We go to work hoping that people don't realize that we're not as competent as they think we are. And that's true all the way up in my experience. So
yeah. So I think with that, the person that is going to ask these questions, in their minds, they're thinking, I can't ask this person questions. They haven't got time for me. What's in it for them? What are they going to do? What are they going to get from this? This is what's going through people's heads.
That's right.
Yeah. So why should somebody then be like, oh no, I should ask this person questions? Like, I'd like to hear your...
Yeah, absolutely. Look, everybody's in it for themselves. We're all very selfish. But we recognized about 500,000 years ago that selfishness is better on teams.
Okay.
We're much more effective, much more efficient if we're selfish together. Right? Like if I hunt and gather for myself, I may or may not survive. If I want to have offspring and then I want my species to continue, then I'm going to have to hunt and gather for myself and others. I'm going to have to protect them. And if I'm off hunting and gathering, who's protecting my next generation from the other apex predators on the planet, right? So if I partner with you, you can protect the other, our people, our tribe. I can hunt and gather enough for all of us to eat. And that's the division of labor, right? We have the first division of labor, one hunter, one protector, one nurturer, one educator, or food prep, or whatever, right? So that's the beginning of Adam Smith's division of labor. Now we have like coffee roasters and but like we have baristas and social media managers and stuff like that. We have tens of thousands of differentiations in terms of what can be done in adding value. So recognizing that we're in a conversation with somebody who wants to, by design, participate in a society that will provide for them and protect them as they add value. That gives us the way into every life. So what I do most is I ask somebody, is there anything I can do to support you? I don't say, can I help you? Or what can I do for you? I say, is there anything that I can do to support you? It's a yes or no question, but it forces them to think, how can I use this other person, me?
Yeah.
How can they use me to improve the quality of their own lives? It gets them into that selfish frame where very often if you're speaking to somebody that's higher than you perceptionally in the food chain, they'll think about it, right? They'll think, oh yeah, you know what you could do? You could do this. If you're adding value to that person's life to improve the quality of their life in some way, that's a great way to start the conversation, right? What's in it for them is their definition of what's in it for them. The fastest way to get that out is to ask them, how can I help you selfishly achieve your selfish desires? What value can I add to your life? How can I improve the quality of your life? And the question that I have for that is, how can I best support you?
How can I best support you? Yeah. So I think as well, like if we look at who you are as a person, you want to help people. Yeah. That's who you are to the core, I believe. Yeah. And you speak about this, and that's great to see as well. So I think if somebody's coming to you, and I think there's many people that are like you, and they might wear more of a senior hat or be more stern face or not say I love you or anything, okay? But I think they want to help people.
Yeah, sure.
But they need to feel that person not is worthy of help, but they're the word like coachable. And they can see that they're going to be open and not just trying to use them.
Sure.
Yeah. So what does that look like? So for you to help somebody else, what do you need to see from them for you to be open to give them your intelligence and information?
Yeah, I think in terms of coachability, we measure that in 4 things.
Okay.
The book is called Becoming Coachable. It's actually really good. It was Marshall Goldsmith and Jacqueline and Scott Osman and Jacqueline Lane, who just published the book last year. It's fantastic. There's basically 4 ingredients in coachability: the willingness to change, the openness to feedback, the openness to take action, and the openness for accountability. If there's openness to change, openness for feedback, action, and accountability, then you're coachable. And so I'll usually start the conversation there, is try to figure out, does this person actually want to change? And very often, they don't. No. They don't. They think they do, but they actually aren't open to change. And are they open to feedback? Very often, they're not. No. Right? Look, in our larger organizations, 10,000 employees or more, people don't rise to the tops of those ranks by being highly emotionally intelligent. They rise to the tops of our organizations are designed to filter out people who are a bit ruthless. Yeah. And to get them to the top, because it's the ruthlessness that gets you there. You get there because you're willing to step on somebody else's feet in order to get there. You're willing to marginalize somebody, to take credit for something that wasn't yours. You're willing to make decisions that other people wouldn't make in order to get there. And a lot of our organizations are still designed that way. We reward ruthlessness. So the people that I sit in front of typically are not the kinds of people that have been told they're wrong very often. They're not the kinds of people that have been told that, diversity is a value in and of itself. They're not the kinds of people that have been told that they need to surround themselves with people that are different than them in order to make a higher quality decision. They're the kinds of people that feel very right most of the time, feel that their way is the right way, and that it is the right way because it's their way. And they have a career of evidence that supports that, right? What they've done in their history has led them to where they are, and that justifies the means. Make sense? So their openness to change is reduced as a result of that. My job is to listen. I spend a good deal of time with my coaching clients, especially in the first little while, just listening to them. What is it that they need? What is it that they want? Where is their ego taking them? Usually in the first few hours, they'll give me enough. They'll give me enough information that I can. Well, let's say that it's an unfair playing field, because as soon as I set foot in the room, they have no idea what I can do, and I do. Yeah,
I call myself the smiling assassin.
Yeah.
So when I'm sat with clients, sat with people, I'm asking questions because I care and I want to understand,
Yes.
okay? But I will use that against them later on because it's to help them challenge themselves,
Yeah.
to help them make a decision for themselves as well, to be able to overcome something.
Yeah.
And I'll use what is their pain at the moment
Sure.
to then drive it because there's that gap from where they are to where they want to be.
You said you use it against them, but I don't believe that to be true. I think that's a turn of phrase. You don't use
it. It sounds better though.
I know what you mean.
Okay.
I think was it John Maxwell said it really, really well, that the difference between manipulation and motivation is benefit. If the other person's quality of life is going to go up as a result of whatever it is that you're doing, then it's not manipulative, it's motivational.
Okay.
So you're not using anything against them. You're going to use it in their benefit to improve the quality of their life in a way that they could not have considered themselves.
Yeah.
Does that make more sense?
No, definitely. You can't control somebody. Okay.
Correct.
People don't want to be controlled. People want to make their own decisions. Okay.
That's correct.
But you guide them down a path where they feel like they're in control, but you're already 2 steps ahead.
Correct.
So you're taking them to those next steps because you've tread those roads before, those paths before, and you know that if you go here, this will happen here, and then before they know it, and this is what I feel that a lot of people need to work on, is that you need to plant a seed in somebody's head, in their mind, and then they wake up 2 months later and they go, "I've got a great idea." Yeah. And you've been working on that person for 2 months.
That's right.
And they've come to their own decision themselves.
That's right.
And I think a lot of the time with these C-suites and higher executives, you can't have an ego with them. But also as well, you can't, I feel, and that's what I'd like to discuss, you can't be submissive with them.
Correct.
They have to feel that they're in a room with someone of authority.
Absolutely, yes.
So that's how I feel about it. But I'd love to, with your insights of...
100%. So I'm writing 2 books this year. One of them is on focus. It's called Undistractable. And the other one is on coaching. And it's called The Chief Executive Coach. And it's out of my frustration that the coaching world believes that anyone can coach anyone in anything. And that is abjectly false. Yeah. It is not true. It's not true in the medical industry. It's not true in the Olympics. It is definitely not true in business. There's no such thing as an Olympic athlete that doesn't have an Olympic coach, right? And you'll never find an Olympic coach asking the athlete, "What do you think you should do?" Right? What exercises have you not tried today? No, that's weak coaching. If you want to coach at the highest level, so if you're in the office of a CEO that has 35,000 employees, and you say, "What do you think you should do?" And what else? And what else? Right? Like that's a $30,000 hour. Get out of the office. Yeah. If you can't add value in that hour and a half, why am I wasting my time with you? Right? So those of large organizations sometimes fallen victim to this idea that non-authoritative or completely non-advisory coaches are going to add value to their lives, and they become frustrated, and then they say, actually, you know what, coaching isn't for me. There's no high-performing athlete on the planet that would say, "Oh, coaching isn't for me." You're never going to find Cristiano Ronaldo waking up in the morning going, "You know what, I think I know enough about football that I don't need to be coached anymore." It's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
And yet in business, we have this because what we've been doing is we've been putting amateur coaches in front of Olympic athletes. And we're not surprised. We shouldn't be surprised that those Olympic athletes go, actually, you know what? This amateur coach is not adding value to my performance. So it is true, especially at the C-suite level, you have to have an advisory coach that has enough education, experience, acumen, bravado, whatever, to be able to speak at that level, to hear at that level, to exchange at that level. In order for there to be the right amount of trust, there has to be the right amount of transparency. And in order for a CEO at that level to be transparent, they have to believe that they're in the room with somebody competent. And that is so important.
Yeah.
You have to be able to speak to them on their level. And if you're just a strict non-advisory coach, you really don't belong there.
No. And it's so funny you say the word competent, because on my slides that I put up, I say about being nice will only get you so far.
That's correct. Yeah.
What they're looking for is that you've got a high level of competency.
That's correct.
Yeah, because, and I say this like I have a real estate background from many years ago, okay? So they need to know, and again, you might twist it a little bit, but they need to know you can go to battle for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
you're trying to buy a property and it's at 4.5 million.
Yeah.
They're making an offer of 4.2 million.
Yeah.
If you've been so nice to them, well, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And all of a sudden they're sending you into the room with the seller.
Yeah.
Are they going to be thinking he's going to go hard on this guy and he's going to get me 300,000 off? Or is he going to be like, he's gone in there and he's been so nice and everything? He's going to be thinking, he can't get this done for me.
That's right.
So I'm going to go elsewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly right. In my with my coaching clients, I think one of the big benefits is I don't need them. I don't need them to improve my level of play as much as they need me to improve their level of play.
Yeah.
And the impact is going to be well weighted on their side.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of benefit. But the cost is also well weighted on their side. The most important, the highest level of cost isn't my fees, it's their time, right? It's the time taken away from something else. It's the missed opportunity cost of not, putting those hours into some other thing. It's the decision-making fatigue and decision-making cost that comes from it. But the benefit that they get by having somebody competent in the room is not that I'm going to battle with them, but that I'm going to battle with them. Right? They get a sparring partner that's actually going to hit them. Yeah. Rather than, tapping them on the shield and tapping them on the sword. They get to spar with somebody that's not going to pull punches. I tell them when they're being jerks. And that's what they pay me for. Because nobody in their life will ever tell them that.
But you understand how they want to be called a jerk, though.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
I do it in the nicest possible way.
No.
my most Canadian voice. Sorry, you're being a jerk. Yeah. No, but
you understand, even if you're being aggressive, that might be how they need it. And if they need a soft approach and let them come to you're understanding how they want to be because you've gone through that journey of understanding them first of all.
That's correct.
And then you go into it.
And they trust me because my agenda, everybody has an agenda. My selfish agenda isn't political, right? Where people in the organization, they might be sparring with the chairman or the CFO or the CMO or whatever. They're fighting with them. And those people have political agendas in the organization. I don't. I don't care. No. Okay? I care about their performance. My agenda is I want to make you stronger, faster, sharper. I want to make you make higher quality of decisions. And I want to see you thinking more broadly about the things that you're looking at. And my agenda is to keep you wanting to fight with me, to keep you wanting to be transparent with me. My agenda is to keep this open because as long as this relationship is open, the longer it's open, the more influence I'll have, the more impact I'll have on you, and the more money I make. Yeah. Make sense? Makes sense. I'm adding value to the tribe in exchange for a share of the resources. And the value that I add is very often as a sparring partner that is brave enough to hit you and to hit you well enough that it might hurt when you go home. You might go home with a bit of a limp that you wouldn't have gotten from a CFO or a CMO or even the chairman of the board. And that limp, it heals in a couple of days, usually just a little bit of an ego bruise. But they're very, very grateful to have someone in their life that sees them that closely, hits them that hard, well enough to hurt, not well enough to scar. Make sense?
Yeah, I think, we're in this room now.
Yeah.
We go through this now.
Yeah.
We iron everything out, because when you get out there, you'll be fully prepared and you'll be able to
That's
get
right.
this done and be seen as what you want to be.
Yeah, it builds their resilience,
Yeah.
and it gives them access to another tactic, something that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
Because I've sparred with them in this way, and now they've learned something. Oh, right, there's that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now they have another set of tools. It may have been challenging to learn that set of tools, but boy, is it powerful. I often describe the psychological tools that I bring in coaching as a set of knives.
Okay.
I tell them, this is my set of knives. I will teach you to cook with them, but you may also use them to kill. But the tools for motivation, manipulation are exactly the same. The tools for negotiation and manipulation are exactly the same. It is just a set of tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we draw to an end with this now,
Yeah.
I look over to my left and I see your book.
Yeah.
Okay, which is called Love at Work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what I read in there was an example which you used, which was in regards to Henry, Peter, and Shirley.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Henry was the senior of both of the people.
That is correct, yeah.
And Peter and Shirley, they were aligned together, but then there was a change within the company.
Yeah.
And Shirley at one time was potentially going to report to Peter.
That's
not
correct.
a direct line, but just a way of communication.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. It turns out that Shirley did not end up reporting to Peter. She ended up reporting to Henry.
That's correct.
And she told Peter that it was because Henry asked to do this.
That's right.
Okay. But what it turned out was that she felt that on her CV, this would not look good for her if she's not still reporting to the senior person.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, Peter, he let it get to him.
He felt slighted.
Yeah. Okay. And you spoke with him.
Yeah.
And you understand where Shirley's coming from.
That's right.
Yeah. But what I didn't like about it,
Yeah.
as we finish up, is that Shirley was never confronted. Peter should have confronted Shirley and said, look, I understand that this is how you felt, but I want to make my feelings felt as well.
Look, this is a real scenario, by the way. Their names are not Henry, Peter, and Shirley.
No, I understand.
But Peter and Shirley are both SVPs in a major organization.
Yeah.
Right? It's a massive company. We're talking 10,000 employees. So, but it's amazing to me how much these little emotional slights can cost an organization.
Yeah.
Right? The friction between them over the course of a year was just massive. And if they were just to sit in a room together and talk it out over 10, 15 minutes, it could have been solved.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting to me, it was actually Henry's decision. So Shirley might have said, hey, I prefer to be reporting to you. But at the end of the day, it was Henry's authority, not Shirley's authority, under which that structural change was made.
Okay.
So Peter felt slighted both by Shirley and by Henry in that exchange. Yeah. But it was very petty, all of them. It was all very petty. And the challenge is that all of them are just too emotionally shy, and there's just not enough psychological safety in any of those three relationships to be fully transparent about that.
Okay.
That was the big challenge.
Well, look, we'll have to draw this to an end here, but I really appreciate your time, your effort, your energy coming onto the show.
My pleasure.
Where can people see you or find you or listen to you?
Oh, goodness. LinkedIn is my primary social media channel. My website, corrieblock.com, you'll find all my announcements there. I've got a channel on YouTube. And if there's anything you'd like to see me talk about, interact with me. Tell me. I want your thoughts on this. Okay. And I'm fairly transparent, fairly authentic about that.
Great. All right. So as we draw this to a close, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And the theme of this show really is around finding someone's turning point.
Good.
Reaching that point. And I believe listening to people like yourselves, people will find their turning point from the content.
Amazing.
What you're sharing.
Then let your turning point be the decision to offer more love than you've ever received.
There we go. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr.
My pleasure.
Corrie Block. Thank you. Cheers.